I'll show you a mix I made for THALL. I used only 3 plugins. You're gonna need about 11 plugins and some stock THALL plugins. And yeah, this is how it's gonna sound. Alright, so okay, before I list off all the plugins that you're gonna need, this is an important one. So if you have a 6 string and you wanna do drop E, drop, I don't know, those really low tunings, you're gonna wanna use this plugin called Pitch Proof. It basically just down tunes your guitar by however much you want. So -7, I'm probably drop G, I think. And it's not perfect. It does sometimes does sound a little bit screwed up sometimes, but I mean, everything I did here was I'm back actually in drop D, and I've down tuned with this plugin to drop G, and sounds pretty good. So yeah, that's one way to work around that. If you don't want to buy a fucking 9 string, just set it to all the way to wet, and -7 if you want to drop G or whatever. Alright, so you're gonna need that one if you own a 6 string. The other plugins are Empty Power Drum Kit, Ignite Emissary for the amp. You're also gonna need an IR loader, also by Ignite, NAD IR. You're also gonna need some IRs. I can leave a few in the description so you can download and use them. I also use these plugins, G Gate. It's a free gate plugin. You can use any gate you want. G-Tune, so you can tune your guitar. Also, I like the G reverse delay. It gives a cool spooky effect. Then you're also going to want to download a TSC 808 plugin. It's basically an overdrive pedal before the amp itself. For the bass, you're going to want BOD. It's a free bass overdrive plugin. I also use the Cymatics Diablo Light on it. It's not really the most important out of all of these, so if you don't want to download it, that's okay, but that's what I used. Also OTT, really well-known plugin. It's good for compressing the hell out of stuff, and I used it on the clean intro guitar because they always compress the shit out of these in THALL. Anyways, it's a cool plugin, so you can download that as well. So those are the 11 plugins we need. Alright guys, so I'm gonna show you how I set this up. In the first track we have drums. That's where you put your drums. Bass in the second one. Guitars are here. I've linked these to mixer tracks. So these are panned left and right for the left and right guitar. So all you need to do now is when you hit record and say record something, the signal which should be recorded, you can just drag it over and put it into the left channel, and now it's already panned and ready to go. So you just record, put it there, and it's routed to the correct channel. Let's start here. I have the fake master because if I put it on the real master, I couldn't record audio correctly, and it's a nice idea to have a fake master before anyway, so you can tweak it a lot more. So all of these go into the fake master. I have guitar, left and right rhythm guitar. These go into the rhythm guitar bus in case I want to EQ them or do some bullshit. I can show you that later. And they all go into the guitar bus, and then they go to the master. I have 2 record channels. Now this is what I like to keep CPU usage low. I set the tones in here on the record channels so that I record straight into distorted signal. I don't keep the DIs and then run it through the plugin again because it uses a lot more CPU. So that's another trick to keep it less intense on your PC. I use a bunch of those plugins I'll show you later, and I also have a clean recording, so I set up these two, so I have 2 different tones here. It's pretty good. Then I have the bass. the bass goes straight to the master, but it's also being side-chained by the kick. So I'll show you that later, but basically it ducks the volume of the bass whenever the kick hits, because we want the kick to be really low and thuddy for THALL, and it would mess up the bass if both were playing it at the same time. So this basically just ducks the bass every time the kick hits. And yeah, we have the individual drums go into the drum bus, and I have a reverb send here. Basically I just send the snare to that, so you get a bit more impact on the snare. Basically that's the template. I left some space here in case you want to, I don't know, use synths or some shit, so just so you have more area to work with. Of course you can just control, click and hold, select these, and then alt and arrow keys to move them wherever you want. So I will upload this template. Right, so I guess I'll start with the clean guitars. As I've said before, I record straight, I like print these effects directly onto the track. I don't record DIs because I want to save on CPU space. This is what it sounds like by itself. I mean, pretty basic, just 4 notes. But what you hear, that hiss sound is from the OTT. This is the channel I recorded, record clean. So I would set up my guitar here. I used pitch proof to lower it down to the octave that I'm using. Like the whole song is in drop G. Next we have hardcore. This comes stock with THALL. I used the ballad clean channel. I didn't touch the reverb, didn't touch the chorus, not even the EQ. I maybe just lowered a bit of the bass because the guitar is getting really bassy. So just copy this, I guess. After that I used Fruity Delay Bank, and I don't think I even changed much here. I think I used a preset on it, 3 echoes or whatever. This is not really that important, but I wanted to get that delayed effect, so I used this OTT, which basically just made it, I lowered a bit of the upward compression because it introduces a lot of noise. I mean, you kind of want that to be kind of grimy and dirty, but it was a bit too much, so I just pulled it down a little bit. Didn't really do much here. It's kind of good already. Just a simple, clean tone out of the guitar from this preset. It's pretty good. Alright, so the rhythm guitars, this is what they sound like. Alright, so they sound pretty good. I had some trouble with the noise created by these plugins, so I used 2 gates. One in the beginning, minus 30 dB, and one at the end to cut off the noise created by the plugins. I don't know why this happened, but I guess this works, so I don't mind using 2 gates. If it works, it works. You can copy the settings if you want. I mean, depends on your guitar. Maybe your guitar makes less noise, I don't know. Pitch proof. I used it to downtune the guitar. After that, we're going into a TSC 808, which is an overdrive. Just hit the drive, hit the tone. That's it. Didn't really touch much. I just wanted to get it a little bit more dirty. Dirty up the sound before the amp. Now we have the amp. I basically just boosted a little bit of the gain, boosted a lot of the bass, some low mids as well, some high mids, and a lot of treble. So with this amp in particular, I always kind of thought that it sounded too dull or muddy. And also, you should check on the back of the amp. This power tubes can be turned off, but I turned it on and put it on this preset. Just gave it a bit more, I think, presence, if I remember correctly. So that's it for the amp. It's not really complicated, just you can eyeball these. I mean, of course, you want to adjust it to your guitar. Depends on how your guitar sounds. Now, this is probably the most important part for the tone. The IR loader. So basically, if you just use the amp, it's going to sound like shit. You need this IR loader. It basically mimics how a speaker or a cabinet of the amp would color the sound. I'll leave some in the description so you can try out different tones. And as I said, the gate on the end to cut off any annoying sounds left when I mute. for THALL, you really want it to be precise and you know, cut off quickly when you palm mute and stuff. That's it for the guitar tone. Alright, so bass. It's probably the most difficult one. I found this plugin called Ample Bass P2 Lite. The only problem with this one, I mean, it sounds great on its own, but the only problem with it is it doesn't go too low. So the lowest note I can play is D, which kind of sucks, but that's okay, because I use some effects on it trying to make it sound, you know, deeper than it is. So first I use the overdrive pedal. You can just copy these settings. I mean, I try to get it more grimy and stuff. I used an EQ to boost some of that presence to get that clack 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 sound of the bass, you know, and just a little bit playing here, removing it. Actually, I'm adding mud here by accident. Do this. Yeah, that's better. Just a stupid EQ. Fruity Vape Shaper just to get it a little bit more impactful, I guess. Then I use the Cymatics Diablo Light. Doesn't really matter. This plugin isn't too important for the sound, but it did kind of give it a bit more of a, you know, punch, a more in-your-face sound. So I used that. And then an EQ at the end. This one is more extreme, so I'm cutting a lot of the fucking mud in this. It was really hard to get the sound that I wanted. Normally I use some other plugins which are more CPU intensive. This was just like a challenge to try and make something free that sounds good as well. So yeah, I did that. And at the end we have a limiter on the compression setting. And this is the sidechain to the kick. So anytime the kick hits, the bass is gonna lower in frequency, I mean lower in volume, so they don't mess up each other. So that's what sidechaining is. I used 20% compression, knee, 3.2 ratio, and threshold of minus 17 dB. Release is 15 milliseconds. You can just test it out while you're playing and see what sounds better. Here I can show you with the drums. So the limiter is actually pretty important. You can see it ducks a little bit more when these things are happening, which is cool. After that was basically the bass tone. I didn't really do much. Now this is not gonna sound fucking amazing, but it's not gonna be terrible. It's usable, I guess, if you're not trying to do anything too complicated with it. Alright, that's it for the bass. For the drums, this is probably the most interesting thing I did. I, of course, used empty power drum kit. By default, it sounds way different. So this is no effects. And this is with. So basically the most difference I made was to the kick and the snare. I routed it out: kick, snare, hats, toms, bells, crashes, china, and the drum bus. So all of these individual drums go into the same effect bus, so I can do more effects on them. And I also have a reverb send for the snare to just give it more, you know, emphasis. So for the kick, I use the compressor to get the sound more thick, I guess. The EQ is the most important thing. I cut a bunch of the low mids out of the sound because they create a lot of mud, and I boosted a lot of the low end and cut some of the high end again because I thought this area sounded really bad, clicky. This is the good clicky area. This would sounded bad, at least on this particular drum, and I got it to sound a lot better, in my opinion, a lot closer to what you'd want in THALL. So it sounds really thick and hits quite well. After that, I used a soft clipper because without it, the kick level was just way too high. So I needed to, cut off the transient to make it so I can mix it better with the other stuff. Alright, for the snare, I used EQ. I boosted the low end hit. I'll show you just a second. So for the snare, I boosted the area in the low end where it hits. So you can see the spike is right there. I boosted it even more to give it more body. And just turn off the reverb send channel because it's making a lot of noise. So I boost the low end punch, and then I cut a lot of the frequencies under that because they create kind of a muddy. They just make it like less defined. Here you can kind of feel the hit, and you can see where the notes of the drum is. I boosted a little bit of the attack in the high end, and just a little bit more presence, so it sits better in the mix. Might sound like shit alone, but with everything else it sounds really good. And I'll show you quickly the send channel as well for it. It's making a lot of sound because I have a reverb going into distortion. So if I wanted to really make this perfect, I'd create an automation clip and make it fade out every time. I don't want it to be heard, but it doesn't really matter right now. For the snare reverb send, I used an EQ to make it really a lot more bassy. This is the same area where the snare hits in the low end and the high end. I wanted to get all that punch and then put it into the reverb. This is fully on wet, so you're not hearing any of the actual snare sound, you're just hearing the reverb. And I used this preset here, and it actually gave it a lot more body in the low end, made it sound a lot thicker compared to without it. And I also used some distortion on it, because this would mimic kind of a room mic for the snare. I put a lot of distortion on here to make it just pop more. For the hats, did nothing, absolutely nothing. For the toms, I just used a compressor, nothing too fancy. I didn't even really use them in this song, so doesn't matter. Bell ride, literally nothing. Crashes, I used some EQ on the crashes because I thought I had some really unpleasant frequencies up there. Just cut around 9,000, around 7,400, and around 4,300. Just thought those frequencies sounded like shit, so I removed them. And also another EQ where I removed more. The China, I also removed a bit of the frequencies and dipped some of it because I thought it sounded bad. Just trying to clean up the sounds. So all these sounds go into the drum bus. Here I used the Fruity compressor. I think I just loaded the drums preset and then just tweaked a little bit of the threshold and ratio and the gain. You can copy that. It really brings the drums together when you compress them. Use the Maximus preset. I think I went for the Clear Master just to give it more like punch, and I played with the gain on the low end because at first it sounded a little bit too strong, I guess, in the low end. I just wanted to sound a little bit more natural. Then I came back in and I added a bit more high end. This area really helped the snare sound more present, and this is just for the cymbals, China and stuff, because I EQ'd all those frequencies. I needed a little bit more of a boost up there. And also a Fruity soft clipper for the drums, because while they're still playing, the kick and the snare have by far the most sharp transients, or the loudest transients, so I just wanted to tame them a little bit more so they are easier to fit with everything else. And yeah, that'll be it. It all goes into the Fake Master, and on the Fake Master I have a compressor. I think this was just a leveler, and I moved the threshold to -10 dB and the ratio to 2. It's really not doing too much, It's letting a lot of those transients through, but it's kind of still evening out the signal. And then I send it into a limiter, boost the gain up by 3 dB, leave the ceiling on 0 decibels, release as default, I think 85 milliseconds, sustains 10 milliseconds, just to even out the audio at the end. That's it, that's pretty much the whole thing. I hope you like it. You can try it out and tell me what you think about the mix.